So today we are going to finish the first section of chapter 7. Shh, settle in, guys. So this is section 7.1, day 2. It is the second page of your notes. We're going to start with the definition of a rate. A rate is a special ratio in which the two terms are in different units.
That's it. Only see ratios.
You are on the wrong page. This is day 2. This is 7.1, day 2.
Oh my God.
Oh, it says 7.1. It has the word rate.
Oh, I see it. Good job.
So a common rate, like miles per hour. One of the numbers represents the miles. One of them represents hours. So it's not like what we looked at yesterday, where it's like hours over hours or miles over miles. They can have different units, okay? And most of the rates you see are what's in unit rates, like miles per hour. It is just accepted that it's how many miles you go in 1 hour. Or like miles per gallon when you start buying gas. That's in 1 gallon, okay? And that's called a unit rate. So a unit rate describes how many units of the first type corresponds with 1 unit of the second type. So miles per gallon is how many miles you get in 1 gallon. Or miles per hour is how fast you could go, how many miles you could go in 1 hour. Okay, those are all unit rates. Like when you start applying for college, you'll hear like the student to teacher ratio, how many students per each one teacher. So those are some common unit rates you might encounter in your lives. All right, there is a spot in your notes for what we just talked about. So common unit rates are like miles per gallon, cost per items, miles per hour, things like that. So we want to express each of these as a unit rate. So remember, a unit rate has the second number of 1. So if you had a fraction with a 3 on the bottom, and you wanted to turn that 3 into a 1, what would you divide everything by? 3. Same idea here. We are just going to divide this number by this number, rewrite it as a ratio where the second number is 1. Okay? So the original ratio is $1,200 to 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, $1,200. We want to reduce this to make this bottom number a 1. So when I divide the top and bottom by 1, that gives me $400 over 1 week. We don't really say it like that in real life. We usually say per week. So unit ratios are written usually with the word per. Any questions on a unit rate? All right, here's the next one. If you can go 12, no, not 12. If you can go 15 miles in 60 minutes, I want to write this as a unit rate. So, this one's a little harder because it doesn't divide evenly. I heard someone say, oh, just make it 1 hour. I would not get in the practice of changing the units for a unit rate. I would just keep the units as it is. Okay, so if it takes you 60 minutes to go 15 miles, a unit rate is how far you can go in 1 minute. So you just divide the 15 by 60. Okay, so you're basically just dividing and writing it with the word per whatever units this is. Do you guys have any questions? When we're done with the lesson. All right. Here is number 3. 289 feet in 17 seconds. I want to write this as a unit rate. First thing I do is write it as a ratio. So just 289 over 17. Keep the labels with each. What do I want to divide these by? 17. And I know 17 divided by 17 is already going to give me 1. That's why I picked it. So you're basically just dividing this number by this number. What would you get? What's 289 divided by 17? Yeah, write faster and quit screwing around. What is 289 divided by 17? 17. So how would I write the answer? 17.
289.
17 seconds per hour.
No, 17 feet per second. Good. So we have 200 miles on 10 gallons. So like if you're driving your car, you go 200 miles, it takes you 10 gallons. First, we're just going to write a ratio. So 200 miles over 10 gallons, and then you can reduce. 20 miles per gallon is absolutely correct. Number 5. No. Just talked about it. All right, number 5. $26 in 4 hours. We want to write this as a unit rate. So first write it as a ratio. So you'd have $26 over 4 hours. Divide 26 by 4. It does not divide evenly. When you type it into the calculator, you actually get 6.5. When we are talking about money, don't ever leave it as 6.5. Okay? You need a dollar sign. You need a 0 at the end. Any questions?
No.
What are you going to do on the last one?
Same thing.
The same thing. However, check the order on that one.
It's that one.
It kind of depends on how you want to look at the problem, okay? Because if we have 51 minutes to run 6 miles, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of backwards because you usually do like miles per hour, right?
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive to what we've been thinking, but just stick with the order that they give it, okay? So you're still just going to divide the first number by the second number.
Okay. So you do it for everyone.
So instead of miles per minute, it's minutes per miles. That's fine. Just stick with the order they give it. So you're still going to do 51 divided by 6. All right?
Yes.
Now, if you write it as 8.5, that's fine.
Okay.
Any other questions we need to talk about before we move on?
No.
Okay. Now, this is a review of what we talked about yesterday. So it is absolutely crucial for the rest of the chapter that you are getting really good at these proportions.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're going to look at these again. A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. Okay? There's a blank for you. In the blank goes the word proportion. All right, here is number 7. Now we're going to write these and solve them. So you have some blanks in your notes. So we're going to write these just like we've been writing the ratios in the first part. Except we're not going to reduce, we're just going to cross multiply. So we have...
Cross multiply is the thing where you feel like
You multiply across the x. Across the equal sign, you draw like an x. All right, so the trick to these is whatever number you put on top in one of the ratios, you have to put that same number on top in the other. So I'm going to put flights over days. That's going to equal, I have to write the second one in the same way, flights over days. Okay? So in the first sentence, I got the 300 and the 2. Flights over days. So what needs to go on the top of my second ratio? The flights. But it's the variable, right? So x over how many days? 7. So you just have to write them in the same way. So if I put flights on top, days on the bottom, I just go flights over days equals flights over days, cross multiply to solve. This is what we did yesterday, so you might need to check that. All right, we are going to cross multiply. So 300 times 7 equals 2 times x. What do we get for the x?
2,000. No, it's 150. I mean 1050.
Awesome. What are your questions?
No.
All right. And since it is a word problem, you should take it back to, the label that's up here. So x represents the number of flights. 1,050 flights. Any questions? All right, here is number 8. So we're going to write a proportion. We're going to solve 3 miles over minutes. What would my first ratio look like? 3 over 22 equals 8 over y. Good. And then just double check. This number represented miles. This number represented minutes. This number represented miles. This number represented minutes. Now you cross multiply. 3 times y.
3y.
3y equals 22 times 8. 8 times 22 is 176. Divide that by 3. You get 58.7. And that represents minutes. So if you want to round to the nearest minute, that would work out just fine on this one. Typically on homework quizzes and tests, it'll tell you how to round.
Looks like we don't have enough time today.
All right. Any questions on number 8?
No.
All right. Here's number 9.
Will we go the rest tomorrow?
No, we're doing it all today. Number 9 says a 13-acre field has a yield of 360 bushels of wheat. What yield can be expected for a 50-acre field? So same thing, there's just more words involved. We want to decide how to write the ratio. You could do bushels over acres. I'm going to do acres over bushels. It doesn't matter as long as you do it consistently. Okay? So acres on top. What's the first number I know for acres? 13. That goes with how many bushels? 360. So 13 over 360. That's going to equal how many acres? 50 over x. That's what we're looking for. We are looking for how much can you expect? How many bushels can you expect from 50 acres? So line up acres and acres. Bushels and bushels. Cross multiply, we get 13x equals 50 times 360. Yep. Divide by 13. Good. Again, we'll just round to the nearest whole number. So 1,385 bushels. I will attempt to do these next couple a little on the quicker side, but you got to write quick too if we're going to try to get through these, okay? All right. Number 10, if 9 fully loaded trucks carry a total of 140,400 pounds, how many trucks are needed to carry 202,800 pounds? Okay, so I am going to write these ratios as trucks over pounds. What do I know?
140,000.
Yeah, where does that go?
On top.
If I'm doing trucks over pounds, this number has to go on the bottom. What number would go on the top? 9. That equals, my variable is how many trucks. So the X needs to line up with how many trucks I had in the first ratio, which is 9. So trucks, trucks, pounds, pounds. Cross multiply. This is one where I probably wouldn't even clear my calculator. Just multiply it out, divide it out. For the sake of time, I will ruin the surprise for you. You get 13 trucks.
Are there gonna be like big numbers like this now?
There might be.
That's a big old number.
I mean,
I ain't getting no 13.
maybe. But like I said, I just wouldn't clear the calculator. You know, this is only in the millions. Your calculator can handle up into the millions. Questions?
No.
All right, here's number 11. When you ready? We good? Number 11. If you can drive 125 miles on a 5-gallon can of gasoline, how far can you go if you have 1.5 gallons of gas? All right. So I'm going to do, what ratio do you think?
Miles over gallon.
Miles over gallon sounds perfect. So I know that I can go 125 miles with 5 gallons. Where does the 1.5 go?
On the bottom.
On the bottom, because it represents gallons. What goes on top? An X, or a variable of some sort. Perfect. Cross multiply here. We're going to end up with a decimal. Divide it by 5. You're going to end up with another decimal. I am okay if you round to the nearest whole number like we've been doing. So when you do the actual math, you get 37.5. You can round that up. This is one, though, like in real life, I'd be careful with rounding in real life for things like this, you know. If you end up a half mile from where you're supposed to be, that's kind of a big deal. So for worksheets, it's fine. For real life, I would caution you. What's up?
So on the test, if you do or don't round, you still look at the
I will put in the directions how to round. But yeah, since this one doesn't say, we'll just go nearest whole number. All right, this is the last example, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so this says 2 towns. Oh. Two towns on a map are 3¼ inches apart. How far are they really if the scale of the map is 1 inch equals 120 miles? Okay, so have you ever had to do this in social studies class?
Yes.
Where there's like a little thing at the bottom and it's like this far represents this far in real life and you have to like measure it?
Yeah.
That's what this problem is saying.
Yeah.
So, that's something else. It's called a legend on a map. That's like a little ruler on the bottom, and it's like this far. 1 inch represents 100 miles or whatever, and you got to measure it. You should definitely have done that in a class by now. If not, you need to talk to your history teacher. Anyway, so we are going to write ours as inches over miles. So what do I know?
3 and 1/4 over 125.
So these go together? Anyone having any thoughts?
Or 3 1 4 over 8.
Yeah, this is going to go with our x. The information is given backwards from what we've been given. You've been given the two that we know, and then the one we're looking for. Here they give you the actual question right up front. We have 2 towns on a map. They're this far apart. So that ratio is going to be 3 1/4 over the x. The other ratio is going to be 1 with the inches over 120. You could write it either way. I don't really care. In this slideshow, they always put the one they knew in the front, even if it was presented in the back. Again, it doesn't matter. You could also keep it 3 1/4 and just enter it in the calculator with the ABC button. If you want to change it to a decimal, that's fine too. When we cross multiply here, and this is why a lot of legends on a map have a 1-inch scale, because the 1 is really easy when you cross multiply, because you don't really have to divide at the end, okay? So this represents 390 miles. All right. That was kind of quick at the end. Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, here comes your homework.